Hearing is something virtually everyone takes for granted until it's gone. In the next few minutes, you'll meet several patients of Dr. DrMarkSyms, Phoenix's leading hearing specialist. The men and women you're about to meet openly share stories of their emotional and very personal struggles with hearing and hearing loss. This video is intended to give you a look at the journey these people took in battling back and regaining a more normal lifestyle, despite the experience of nearly losing their hearing. If you're facing the prospects of your own hearing loss, this will give you valuable insight in the journey from the patient's side of the experience. And hopefully, from meeting these men and women, it will give you guidance and solace there is a solution out there for you.
I guess really until about 2009, 2010, I didn't feel that it was significant enough that it kept me from leading a normal life per se. Even though I knew it was there, it was in my mind it was not bad. And and finally somebody convinced me that no, it is bad and you need to address the situation, and through not being as stubborn and being more open to addressing it. That's when I started to see the audiologist. But I really didn't do anything about it until my late 40s. I would have trouble hearing. I would have to turn up the volume. Do I know exactly what caused it? Probably not. Just a lot of loud noises, playing music too loud. I did work in some manufacturing environments when I was younger, so the loud noises from the machinery and whatnot, and not having the proper, safety equipment to protect your ears. So anyway, about 2010, I would say, is when I first went to an audiologist and got my first set of hearing aids. And I had them and things were improved somewhat. But over the next couple of years, I noticed that it still became really hard to hear, and it became harder and harder to hear. And all the audiologist would do was turn up, I guess, the volume on the hearing aids. What I tended to find, what happened was I was continually going home with like almost a migraine headache every day from work. So I want to say about 2013, I decided I wasn't happy with the way things were going with the current audiologist that I had been seeing for a couple of years. So I went to a different audiologist, and that person started to perform a hearing test. And really about midway through it, they indicated you need to go see an ear, nose, and throat doctor about your condition. And they're the ones, so the second audiologist was the ones that recommended that I go see Dr. Syms. Knowing, again, what I know now versus then, rather than just going to an audiologist initially, I probably would have gone to an ear, nose, and throat doctor and had them look at my ears and really tell me, what the issue is. And the other audiologist that I've been seeing for 3 years before, just was more interested in selling me a new set of hearing aids. I want to say the late summer of 2013, and I went in and I saw Dr. Syms, and and he, examined my ears. Well, first they did the hearing test, and he examined my ears. And at that point, he's the one that came and recommended that I have laser stenectomy. I had the first ear, my left ear, which was my worst ear. That surgery was done in December of 2013. And then in about 6 months later, basically May of the following year, I had the right ear done. I then started seeing their audiology and hearing center downstairs, and they fitted me with some hearing aids, and that was again in 2014. And so, I haven't had those migraine type headaches or issues with hearing really for the last 6-7 years, which is nice. It's extremely pleasant to be able to hear, and while it's not perfect, it's a far cry from what it was when I first went there in 2013. And like I said, in 2013, I was afraid that at that time I was going to have to quit work because I couldn't hear, and I had a really tough time functioning, understanding people, and just concentrating in general. So to me, that's significant because it allowed me to continue to work and be productive, and which I, in 2013, I didn't feel that I, was going to be able to make it.
I was 4 years old and riding in the back seat of our sedan, and I opened up the rear door. It was one of those old Buicks with the suicide doors that the wind could catch and fly open. Well, I was going to roll the window up, and I grabbed the door handle by mistake when I was 4 years old, and the wind caught the door and threw me out of the car. And I hit the curb and all that stuff from what my mom said. And I had a concussion, and that started everything with my hearing loss. When I was about, I'd say 6 years old, well, I lost my hearing immediately, let's put it that way. When I was about 6 years old, they took me to an audiologist, and they kept me going till I was 18 years old to audiologists all my life. And I went all through school without any hearing device. It wasn't until I was 19 years old that I got my first hearing aid. And at that time, I just got the one aid on my right ear. A few years later, I had a appointment with the House Institute, and they detected I had a hearing loss, a severe hearing loss in my left ear, which was due to nerve damage. Kind of give you an idea. When I went to the House Institute, and the audiologist took care of me there, after she did the testing, I sat there in the room waiting for her, because she said, I'm going to go get a sample hearing aid to try and see what would happen. So she went, I'm going to choke up here a little bit because it's that empowering, that powerful to what happened to me. She brought the hearing device in, put it on my ear, and then she left the room. And I'm sitting there, and I'm hearing this click, 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 click sound in my ear. I'm not really sure what it is. I look out the door a little bit and down the hallway, and there's a lady walking down at the end of the hallway with high heels on. And it's the first time I've ever heard I ever heard a noise like that in all my life. I didn't know what it was. So these are the kind of things that people with hearing impairments go through. People who have had their hearing all their life, when they gradually lose it, it's a whole different scenario. They experience these things and then they start missing them. Whereas I never heard them before, so it was, an experience. When I was about 57 years old or so, decided I need to get something straightened out because it was getting worse. It was 2012 that I went to Dr. Sims for the first visit. Getting into Dr. Sims' office, I spent a lot of time in his office sitting there, him talking to me, consulting with me, really getting deep into the dialogue, which was very important. So I think that as far as that goes, I guess a good word to be used for it is bedside manner, because he really has it. He really knows what he's doing. He really understands what's going on with the patient.
When I was younger, they didn't tell me I should be wearing hearing protection when I was out shooting. They didn't tell me I should wear hearing protection when I was mowing the lawn with a lawnmower with no muffler on it, or driving tractors. I grew up in the country, using power tools, skill saws, and hammer drills, and things like that. No one ever said anything about you need hearing protection while you're doing this. My profession for the last 37 years, I've been self-employed, and I design and install church sound systems. So hearing is a very critical part of my profession. And as a result of working in this profession and being critically listening to sound and differences that it makes, I've gained a lot of knowledge about sound and hearing. My dad wore hearing aids and had hearing difficulty. And we'd be listening to different speakers, and he said, well, this sounds so much better to me. And I couldn't really tell the difference. And then I started listening closer to what he was hearing and realized that there was a major difference in the speech intelligibility between the two different systems. And that's what made it sound better to him, is because he could understand the speech. So that's how I trained my hearing to be able to determine that speech intelligibility, because that's the most critical part of a sound system. First found out that I was having some hearing loss through hearing tests that were being conducted at trade shows that I would go to. I probably didn't notice the hearing loss as much because it's so gradual and so slow that you just don't hear the differences yourself. But when it was pointed out to me by these hearing tests over a span of a few years, they told me that I have a hearing loss, that I should check into getting hearing aids and so forth. And that's what prompted me then to go further and get my hearing tested and look at the possibility of what could be done to not get my hearing back, but get me back to where I could at least hear intelligible speech and carry on conversations and things like that. I started looking into hearing aids, and I discovered that with the hearing aids, I wasn't getting anywhere near the sound that I was getting before. I was getting the speech range back. I could be able to understand and carry on conversations, but it just didn't sound natural to me anymore. And that was what bothered me the most, was that I had lost that natural sound that I was so accustomed to over the years. But one of the reasons I searched out Dr. Sims in the first place was because I contacted Halcyon Research, and I asked for recommendations in the Phoenix metro area, a big area. They gave me 2 names. And so Dr. Sims' office was closer than the other one, so I went there first. Rest is history. I knew going in, I'll pay more money and get the top of the line hearing aids because I am picky about the sound, and I'm going to pay more money and get better hearing aids
I'm an athlete at heart. I was a sponsored runner in my 30s for Soft Sole, which is a foot insert, and for Energies, which is a Gatorade product. So I'm pretty high energy. And I think it was normal hearing, like from going to rock concerts and teaching aerobics. It wasn't crazy in your face hearing loss, but my hearing was within normal ranges. And as I got older, I was married. I'm divorced now. And my husband started to get impatient with my hearing, my ex-husband. He's an impatient person to begin with, and I'm very sensitive to impatience. And so there was an ear surgery you could do. I found out that I had a fixed middle ear bone, and you hear through conductive, and you hear through the nerves, and you hear through the bones in your head. And my middle ear bone did not vibrate, so I did not hear through the bones. So my ex-husband had an ENT friend, and he said, "Oh, come to my office, have Karen come to my office, and I will give her a hearing aid at my cost." Well, I feel, I was 4 years ago, so I was 46 and feeling sexy and did not want hearing aids. I didn't feel I had a problem. No one ever noticed it. My brother and my ex-husband noticed it, but no one else did. I functioned great. And so I went in the office. I got a hearing aid trial. I hated them. And then he said, "Well, my partner does surgery. It's a really easy surgery. They take off your middle ear bone. They put a vibrating plate and you hear phenomenal. And then you won't have to wear a hearing aid. And I'm cosmetically slightly vain." And so I said that would be great. So I went into the surgery. During the surgery, the first cut was too deep. It turns out I didn't even qualify for the surgery. He didn't do the proper testing. So I have open ear bones. It's called dehiscence. And only 10% of the population has open ear bones. You don't do this surgery on open ear bones. Wouldn't you guess, only one of my ears has open ear bones, and that's the one he did the surgery in. So he put in an implant 3 sizes too big. So the implant was sticking through my oval window, which created crazy dizziness. My world was bouncing up and down. So I was crawling around my floors, throwing up, holding onto the walls to walk. Meanwhile, I have a young child. My equilibrium was all off, and I just wanted to die. It happened 4 years ago. And I was a mess. I went to 8 different doctors. All of them said to do the ear surgery except Dr. Sims. All of them said to do this ear surgery. And in fact, one at Mayo Clinic said, if it were my daughter, I would tell her to do it. Well, after I had 2 more surgeries trying to fix this, I flew all the way to Mass General, which is the #1 ENT place in the country. And Dr. Sims was better. That guy wanted to do a lobotomy and to try to fix this. And Dr. Sims is like, "Don't do the lobotomy." And anyway, I had this implant sticking through my oval window. I was so dizzy, and Dr. Sims wasn't convinced that was the only issue. So meanwhile, the first surgeon wanted to go back in 2 weeks after surgery and put in a smaller implant. And Dr. Sims said, "I've never heard of going back in. It's going to be inflamed. It's going to be a mess." Dr. Sims gave me like 15 steroid shots in my ear trying to save it. It didn't work. If I had gone to Dr. Sims first, this never would have happened. But I went to very good names, 8 doctors, and he was the only one that said, "Don't do it." I took the other 7 and I ran with it and I did it. Until 4 years ago, I didn't have these issues.
I'm 68 years of age now. So when I was 50, it was time for the 50,000 mile under the hood checkup that men have for those wonderful things. And I had asked my primary physician to check my hearing because I thought I began experiencing some hearing loss. And so he had a nurse check my hearing. She said, "Yes, you do have some hearing loss." They referred me to a ENT, to an ear, nose, throat doctor. And he had a in-house audiologist that checked my hearing. And she said, "Yes, there is some hearing loss, but it's not related to the aging process." She said that, and I said, "Oh, so what does that mean?" She said, "Well, it means you need to talk to the doctor." And so he said, "Well, I think I know what you have." He said, "We'll send you up for an MRI and see you in a couple of weeks." So 2 weeks later, it came back, and as it turns out, the MRI showed I had what was called an acoustic neuroma, or I think the medical term is vestibular schwannoma, which is a mouthful. And he said, think of it as a vacation gone bad or a bump in the road. But he explained to me that it was a benign tumor, typically, that grows in the hearing canal, and over time, as it continues to grow, it will work its way out of the hearing canal and grow against the brainstem. And anytime you have anything putting pressure on the brainstem, that can be quite dangerous, obviously, or fatal. My choice was to either leave it alone and have a test check periodically with an MRI, or have it removed surgically or through radiation. And so I did my due diligence and made the decision to have it removed surgically. And as I mentioned, Dr. Sims was part of that team of surgeons. And so I had it done at BNI, and the surgery went well. They got the tumor out. However, I did end up losing the balance of my hearing, which I knew was a risk going in. They were able to salvage my facial nerve, because the facial nerve, balance nerve, and hearing nerve all are intertwined within the hearing canal, but they were able to salvage the facial nerve. My balance nerve was cut, so that took some time to regain my balance issues. And but at any rate, so after the surgery, I was seeing Dr. Sims as a follow-up. I first kind of had to relearn how to walk down a sidewalk and how to navigate where a driveway may be sloping, and make sure I'm walking a straight line and not heading towards the street from the driveway. And very simple things like that. It was a challenge, but I remember Dr. Sims telling me, he said, whatever you experience, if you know right then and there that you're having a balance issue at that moment, he said, you try to repeat that step 5 times, I think was the number. And it's like you're basically retraining the brain. And so it took a little while, but I was very aggressive with that. And so I think I felt really the first year was the most challenging, but since then, it's really not all that difficult to deal with. Now it's almost second nature. I mean, it's really a non-issue now.
In my early 30s, and I noticed that I was not hearing as well. I would be off in another room, whatever. The kids were always, my young children were always fussing that they could not hear me, or I was not answering correctly. I was in denial. I did get in. I was seeing a ENT, and he was trying to aid me, but I thought I'm just too young, too vain, too much going on. I worked in the corporate world. I'm not wearing a hearing aid. People look at hearing aids so much different than they look at glasses. And I had a dear friend, and we were actually vacationing, and that told me that she really thought it was time that I consider the hearing aid. And I said, I just can't do it. And I emotionally just not able to do that. And she said, Sharon, I can't see without my contacts. And if I wore glasses, they'd be so thick. Why is your situation different than mine? And eventually went in and ended up needing a staphylectomy in the ear. My understanding was that was going to be very simple. They would go in, that's a little valve inside of the ear, a flap that they would open and allow the sound to come back and forth. That had gotten stuck in place and they needed to correct it. That being said, I had the surgery and there was nerve damage, so it was not successful and could not be repaired. I had lost, at that point I hadn't lost it all, but most of the sound completely in that particular ear. Then as time went on, I'm not even really sure what went wrong, but all of a sudden it just went out. I called the ENT immediately. He brought me in and I had lost the hearing on that side. So then I still was not aided. I was hearing out of the other ear, but the same type of circumstances came up. So when I went in, they determined that again I needed surgery. It was the same issue on the other ear, but because I had entirely lost the hearing in the one ear, I no longer was a candidate. It was too high a risk. So I was told I would have to be aided, even though under normal circumstances it could have been fixed, but too high a risk. I eventually ended up with cancer to the brain on that side of my face as well. So with radiation, it just has become that I'm blessed. I'm still able to be aided, and that's kind of a history. So since about 30, I've been losing my hearing, and now what they call totally deaf. If I were to take the hearing aid out, I would hear nothing. I mean, I wouldn't even hear the smoke detectors. So without my aid, and it's a very emotional thing for me. It matters for me very much that I have somebody like Dr. Sims out there, because I can't even call you and tell you my hearing aid doesn't work because I won't hear you. So my husband would have to do it.
It's amazing how hearing, it does isolate you.
I'm isolated. I don't hear the shower water running.
Hearing loss for a lot of people is, to me, it's something that's invisible to the rest of the world because they don't know it, they don't see it, they don't appreciate it, they don't understand it.
When you can't hear, they think you're dumb because you're not answering, and you hear conversation differently, so you respond incorrectly.
I got depressed. I didn't want to be out and about, and I'm a social person. It's depressing not to be able to hear what's going on.
You go to a restaurant and there's so much noise. I was finding myself pulling away all the time.
I have to be able to exist in this world with what I have available at my disposal.
You get socially awkward if you don't have proper hearing in.
Feeling left out of everything, not understanding, not hearing the conversation correctly.
Or to fake conversations. Do you know I had a lady tell me her husband died, and I said, that's awesome. I had no clue what she said. Yeah, I was just trying to come back with conversation.
I just think that when you know what another person is saying, you can understand where they're coming from. You can get the environment. You can react to it, where you can't react if you can't hear what they're saying. So it's just a lot better when he has his devices in place.
Being a potential grandpa, having been a dad with babies, yearning to hear them cry during the night.
It's totally devastating, and so I have to fight. I don't want to go into fighting. I don't want to give this up. So you learn to do whatever you can do to keep what you got.
When I decided to make the move to go get hearing aids, I go to the local Costco. They give free hearing test. I can get hearing aids there. And I thought, well, let me see what else is available. And I contacted House, and they gave me Dr. Sims' name and another name. And I don't even remember the other name now, but I know he was in the other part of the valley. But when I first met him, I was impressed by how he handled it, what his level of knowledge was and so forth, and working with me.
I was able to do some research and decide where I wanted to go. When I walked in and met him, first things truthfully are, he looked so young. I thought, how could he be this young? And he was so darn cute, but he was really sweet. He sat back and we talked. I'm very emotional over my hearing, or maybe the lack of it, I guess. But he put me so at ease. I hear he's got a 70-some-year-old woman in his chair about ready to cry at the moment because he didn't have all the information. And I got confused and nervous with this hearing loss. He just put me at ease.
I can't remember who referred him to me, but he was a referral. And I didn't see him before the first surgery. I saw him when it was already too late. And he was trying to recover my ear from the first surgery with steroid shots to the eardrum, which was not fun.
It was 2012 that I went to Dr. Sims for the first visit. The test came out that I would qualify for a cochlear implant on my left ear. So we went ahead and had the procedure, and we did that. And It's been a struggle off and on getting used to the cochlear, but they've been very good working with me, helping readjusting it and making it work much better.
I think it's more my eventual growing in knowledge and understanding of what hearing aids are and what they can do for you. Because, you know, when I went in 2010, I said, you know, they did the hearing test. They said, okay, here's a set of hearing aids. Boom, you know, you're done. Like almost like going into a Walmart or a Costco or whatever.
As far as the quality of what I was hearing, it's certainly a lot better now. But I think the biggest part of that had to do with just the technology of the instruments. And so how things have improved dramatically in that regard.
The other thing that that I really like about DrSyms and the audiology group downstairs is, you know, their willingness to take the time to make sure you get into the right brand or the right hearing aid. And so, you know, it wasn't just, okay, Starkey, this is the one for you. Boom, you're done. It was, all right, try the Starkey for, I think it was like 2 weeks, and then try Oticon for 2 weeks and maybe one other, and then let's see what fits best. So it gives you an opportunity to take them out of the office, use them in your day-to-day environment.
For example, in recent months, when I was fitted with the new hearing aids that I'm wearing, what the technician, what the audiologist did to go ahead and tweak it in such a way where it would pick up the various sounds that, based on my hearing loss at this time in my left ear, they were able to go ahead and adjust it accordingly to go ahead and try and pick up those areas that I am not hearing or hearing very well.
Dr. Sims does think outside the box. I will say that what's most magnificent about him, besides his brain and how he thinks, is you're never being upsold. You're never, you know, being pushed into something just to make money in his pocket. He truly looks at each patient, what would be best for this patient.
The original place was like, okay, well, you can take them and you can wear them, and if you don't like them in, say, a week or two or whatever, we'll take them back, but you only get partial credit, and then you get, you know, so whereas, like I said, with Dr. Sims' office, it was really an extra step of, we want to get you in the right hearing aid.
They are very expensive, and I could have probably I know I could have gotten a better deal and maybe, for sure, cost-wise for the hearing aid. But again, it is the customer service. It is the fitting, the continued fitting. It is being able to call up and say, this isn't right. I need some help.
You can get a pair of hearing aids at Costco or wherever for, you know, a couple, just say $1,000, but are they really going to improve how you live your life?
It's quality of life. And so many will try to go that little cheaper route, like my husband.
Dr. Sims would say, Ms. Herzog, I don't need your money. I'm not going to do surgery, because he gets more money for a surgery versus me going in for an office visit at $100 a pop. And he would say, I don't need your money to do the surgery. And he was trying to do truly what was best for me.
There are hearing aids out there that I see advertised every now and then. You buy these, just we'll mail order them to you. You put them in your ears. You know, it's nothing but just a simple little amplification system. It's not tuned to your specific hearing loss. It's just amplifying everything, broad range.
When they're not fitted right, when they're not the best quality for you, and all of us, they're all different for all of us. Our hearing is different. You've wasted that money. So take that $2,500, $3,000 and add a little bit more and get what you need and get that customer service that's going to work with you. And it all, I mean, I'm just way too young to be deaf and have to stay home because I can't interact with people.
I always felt that they had my interest first and foremost.
The questions he was asking, the degree of caring that he expressed, it was going on far beyond that.
His understanding and his knowledge and his ability to share what he knows in a way that I can understand, it's always kept me feeling very comfortable, and where I feel, that there was no reason for me to ever consider working or talking to anybody else.
For a person like me, all I can say is, your Costco's, your places down the street, hearing, they cannot do that for you. You have to have somebody that can understand. In my circumstance, I would prefer not to even be here if I couldn't hear. And he is keeping me hearing and involved in my life now.
You're cheating yourself out of opportunities in life to be able to interact with other people, with your loved ones, and to be able to move on to a happier place. There's nothing more frustrating, more aggravating than not to be able to hear.
Accept the fact that you may have some hearing loss. Go get tested and find out. You got to get past that vanity part of it. And that is so difficult for people to do. And the older you get, the more difficult it is.
I'd give up on a whole lot of other things just to make sure I could hear him. It's my husband's my first priority. It doesn't matter. We all got way too much stuff. Just give it up, because quality of hearing is everything.
The fact is, to me, it's a dramatic improvement, and for me, it's worth that investment.
Get over yourself and go get your hearing tested.
It would not be the same ENT world without him.
When you go from extreme hearing loss to mild hearing loss, it really was life-changing.
You can put off the obvious, though you cannot avoid the inevitable. As you've heard from Dr. Syms' patients, hearing is important to the quality of your life. Once it's lost, it may never be regained. The next step is to schedule a hearing test with the office. There is sometimes a temptation to procrastinate, to shy away from a decision about this, literally at the final step. I really hope you won't do that. Delay has real, practical health consequences. One of our fundamental principles is that the better informed our patient is, the better the overall results. When you leave the office, you will have a complete understanding of the options available to you. This is a decision you can be proud of, a process you can trust, with a doctor you can relax and be comfortable with. This is a great day for a new beginning.